and gentlemen,
this is the one we've all been waiting for.
It's good night, Freak and Irene! Let's get ready to rumble!
Time! And knows how to knock people the fire truck out.
Hey, hello everybody. It's Kelly from Fight Chase. Today we're going to be doing another fight breakdown, and I'm here with Kurt.
I'm Kurt Brooks here from Carson Kickboxing Club, and we're going to be going over the One Championship Enter the Dragon.
Now, if you guys don't know, One Championship is the biggest MMA organization in Asia, possibly the world, but the UFC won't tell you that.
So I guess we'll just jump right into it here on the preliminary card. And one of the biggest fights here on the preliminary card, excuse me, is Gary Tonon versus Yoshika Nakahara. And excuse me if I say these names wrong, because I'm probably going to get a lot of them wrong. So, Kelly, let's go ahead and go into this fight.
Well, that was a pretty good pronunciation if it was wrong, so it works for me. Yeah, everybody, we wanted to start with this fight because it's a name known to a lot of our friends in the jiu-jitsu community as Gary Tonon, as an amazing jiu-jitsu fighter, leg lock fighter. So everybody's really interested to see how he's going to go over and take his talents over to MMA. And if you watched this fight, as short as it was, his head movement seemed really good, and he wasn't getting hit by a good striker. And everybody said, oh, okay, the only way he's going to win is take it down. And, well, we saw that in the first round.
I felt like Gary Tonon's, especially for as long as he's been striking, he moves pretty well. I mean, it looks like he has a little bit of excess movement. He moves a lot, but he moves very well, especially if you watch most of the other guys that come from a strict jiu-jitsu background. They're almost kind of like Frankenstein. They're super stiff. They don't move their head a lot. But yeah, he looked really good out there for as short as the fight was. And then the way that he set up that leg lock was pretty awesome. He shot for that single leg takedown, and then when Nakahara went to pull away, Gary Tonon just dropped straight to his back, laced his legs up and pulled him to the ground. And how long was that fight? 45 seconds or something?
Yeah, it was under a minute.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It is up there on YouTube, which we'll talk a little bit about later, because some of these fights are just hard to find unless you watch them live. But yeah, it's up there on YouTube. If you got a minute, you should go ahead and check it out. It's a pretty great fight.
Yeah, and it ended up with Gary Tonon with the heel hook and a submission right off the bat. So it was a phenomenal jiu-jitsu transformation into MMA. I hope he keeps progressing. I think his striking looked a lot better than most of our jiu-jitsu players that go into, at this early of a stage in his career. He's only been striking in professional, MMA for a couple of years now.
Yeah, and I think he's 5-0 now.
Yeah.
And yeah, he in his previous fights too. I can't remember the names of the other guys that he's been fighting because they're relatively unknown. But yeah, in one of his last fights, he knocked somebody down with a straight right hand, and then he wound up TKOing him from mount. So he's been really impressive so far.
It's good to watch. It's fun to watch. I mean, especially you and I that we love jiu-jitsu, and to see somebody as skilled as he is. I mean, he was a killer in jiu-jitsu. He still is. So to see him go over to MMA, where a lot of people are like, oh, jiu-jitsu doesn't work in MMA, and he's still using jiu-jitsu very effectively.
That's what's kind of cool about One Championship too, is they're getting a lot of those specialists from the Muay Thai and the kickboxing world, and they're also getting those specialists from grappling, which you have Gary Tonon and Shinya Aoki, who fights a little bit later on, both really great jiu-jitsu players.
Yeah, through the whole card, if you do get a chance to watch the card, they will. And here's another thing I really like about One is they give you the background of the fighter. And then what I mean by that is not necessarily because in One Championship they have kickboxing, they have MMA, and they have Muay Thai rule sets, that they don't just tell you what their record is per se what they're fighting. It's actually like you'll have a champion kickboxer and they'll say this is their kickboxing record, or they have a elite Muay Thai fighter and they're going to tell you he's got 350 wins. That's a cool part that like some of the other organizations they don't address because it's not their fights. It's the same thing as a lot of the organizations only address the fights that are happen in that organization.
UFC record, Bellator record, and a lot of times they just kind of overlook the overall record of, all the combat sports that they've competed in.
A lot of times you'll hear like Jiu-Jitsu world champion. That's like kind of one that they'll throw in there because it's a pretty legit thing. But as far as, if you get a Muay Thai fighter that comes into MMA, they're not going to throw out that this guy has 367 wins and 2 losses or something. They just kind of shy away from that because they don't want, in my personal opinion, they don't want that record to outshine the UFC record or whatever the organization is.
Yeah, I guess it could get a little bit confusing. You start spouting out all these different records, but if you're an educated fan, those type of things they are interesting to know and hear.
I love to hear other aspects of the game, from elite fighters, what else they do and their accomplishments.
I guess we'll jump right into the main card. A fight that you saw but that I did not see was Amir Khan versus Saigid, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. It's a Dagestani guy, I believe.
I believe he was fighting out at, again, I think it was Turkey, but he goes under the name Dagi, and this one was it was a pretty good fight. The Amir Khan has the most knockouts in one, so that's you're shaping up to be a good fight when you have a guy that's the top of their game. The Dagi guy has 100% finishing rate. Now, that's pretty legit. That's not when he goes into a fight, that it's going to the decision. He has 100% finishing rate, so that was pretty cool too. And they give you all these facts before you go into the fight.
How many fights does he have?
They said 7 first round finishes, and I want to say that that's in one, but I'm not 100% positive. But again, I don't believe that they said how many total fights that he has.
It's impressive nonetheless. 100% win ratio.
100% finish ratio. Yeah, it's not even,
finish ratio.
We have champions that go to decisions a lot, and you're like, okay, that's good. He's unbeaten, but 100% finishing rate is pretty phenomenal. That you can get the job done 100% of the time is pretty cool. Amir Khan is no joke. The most knockouts in one. So basically right off the bat, Dagi sets up a lot of good calf kicks, and he's setting up his takedown right off of that. And we've talked about that before, and the calf kick is either within the last few years has been kind of a fad. You see it work a lot of the times, and that being a calf kick lower than the knee, which isn't a typical Thai kick, which is above the knee into the higher section of your leg to your thigh. And then he sets up the takedown with the calf kick, and he has good ground pressure right in the first round. And in the first round, I believe he got back up, and they were striking. And it was a right hook and 2 uppercut knockout for Dagi. And it was pretty impressive. They were some power strikes. And that was part of the lightweight Grand Prix that they have, the semifinals of lightweight Grand Prix that the one is having. And one, we'll talk about this in a podcast episode of just the comparisons, but one has a lot of the Pride-esque Grand Prix and big prize money for Grand Prix and things like that they do.
I love that. I love back in the day watching those Pride Grand Prix, and then them coming out with those publisher clearinghouse type checks. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, they do that with the sponsor cards and things like that in one, and they have the ring girls, and when you win your fight, you get a 1 medal. Again, we'll get into that in a different episode, but it's a totally different look. If you haven't watched one championship, you definitely should check it out. It's very favorable to strikers if you want to watch good striking. They have a lot of fighters from all over the world that have elite level striking. So
The
they
best
do have,
striking, really.
yeah, I believe, but you know, we're very being in the States, we're very UFC, centered, focused. So this is something that everyone, if you like MMA, if you like martial arts in general, you should definitely check it out.
The next fight, which is another name that a lot of people know in the United States because he fought in the UFC for quite some time, is Sage Northcutt. So Sage Northcutt versus Cosmo Alexander, which I believe Cosmo Alexander is a kickboxing champion from Brazil. So let's go ahead and jump right into that fight.
Yeah, this was under MMA rules. So again, one uses different rule sets for the fights. There's MMA, kickboxing, and Muay Thai, so each one's going to be a different setup, and they announced that before the fight. So it's a 3 5-minute round fight. As funny as like I was saying that they announce like the credentials of the fighter, and Cosmo Alexander, they said they said he's a very good purple belt, and I'm like, wow. I could be a very good purple belt MMA fighter. I felt that gave me some credit that, hey, I'm purple belt too. So it was kind of funny that was something they threw in. Cosmo also didn't have a loss since 2011.
Oh, wow.
He's been on terror for a while. And let's see. So can't really take a lot of time talking about this one because the first strike put him to sleep. Sage got knocked unconscious cold.
Yeah, it was a pretty quick, bad knockout. I just looked, and social media had a couple articles talking about, I believe it was like 9 fractures to his orbital socket, Sage Northcutt. So it was not just a knockout; it was a pretty devastating one-punch strike.
It was one punch reconstructive surgery. So that's what he got awarded.
Ridiculous power.
But again, you underestimate guys that maybe you're not so known. In the States, we don't really. Cosmo Alexander, he's a huge name in fighting. He has been for a long time, but it goes back to we're very UFC, centered, and a lot of these guys that you're going to see in one, you may never have saw before, but they're amazing fighters.
I thought that one of the things that was really intriguing about this matchup, and I always find it really intriguing anytime somebody from a karate background fights, is they have that sideways stance. And, most of their defense comes from them jumping backwards. So they don't move their head a lot, but they're really quick. Like you try to punch them, they just jump right out of the way. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat was that Cosmo, he was able to get him right up against the ropes. So if Sage isn't able to jump back, then he's in a lot of trouble. So once he got up to the ropes, he just blasted him with that right hand and it was done. And I think that might actually have something to do with, Sage fighting in the UFC, where I believe that the octagon is quite a bit bigger than that ONE FC cage. So, he didn't have as much space to get out of the way as he would normally like to.
Well, these were all fought in a ring also. So
a
lot of the guys say
exactly.
It's a big difference. A lot of the guys, the fighters, they say, well, in a ring, you get stuck in a corner. In a cage, you're circling out. But, something like this, you get pushed up against the ropes. There's not a round way out of it. You're not just able to go to left and right all the time. You can get cut off. And he got cut off quick and knocked out quick. That was power.
And nothing against Sage Northcutt. I think he's a great person. He's a nice, friendly guy. I've met him actually a couple times. But I think that it was good for ONE FC to have somebody come from the UFC and not just completely demolish the ONE FC fighter, because you see that a lot of times with Bellator or some of the smaller organizations where a UFC guy that wasn't even in the top 10 will wind up going over to their promotion and winning the title, which I feel sometimes devalues the organization that they go to because they kind of just make it look easy. Like they're not one of their guys that's not top caliber can go over there and be the number one guy.
Yeah, and like you said, it kind of devalues it, and then it also cements the idea that the UFC has the best in the world, which is arguable because they're only selecting from a certain few, and then especially from what I see personally, the way they're going now is who's marketable. It's not who's the best fighter; it's who's going to make the money at the end of the day.
Yes. And it goes back to a lot of like if you deal with a lot of like small time amateur MMA organizations, that they don't select the people to fight for the titles that have the best resume. They select the guys that sell the most tickets. And it seems like the UFC has almost adopted that because their rankings don't really make any sense. They're purely going on popularity.
Yeah, well, they're going on dollars, and
they're going on dollars.
We'll get into that. But as far as as Sage, amazing athlete. He's a high level athlete. When I saw him come out, the first thing that came to my mind was this guy needs to be in movies. He doesn't need to be fighting.
I think a lot of people have said that.
And he just looks like the good guy action star, so maybe he has a career in doing that later on. Well, I don't know after having his face reconstructed after that punch, but, And the worst part is he had to have all that surgery, and it was one punch. It wasn't even it wasn't a war. Like you see some of these guys come out, and they look like, they've been in an accident with a bus, but, it was one strike, and that was that much power. So,
yep. And, he's going to come back from this. I think he's like 22 or 23. I think he's just really, he hasn't even really honed in all of his skills yet.
No, and I think that which is nice with the one FC is they're gonna cater to his martial arts. They really hone in on the martial art aspect. So of course you don't get cut after 3 fights. That's that's not what you're worried about. You are able to display your martial arts. Aside from worrying about just making the deadline, making those fights and not worrying about, oh man, I've lost 2, am I out of here? That type of thing. That's an extra stress that one doesn't have if you're, a really good fighter. Which goes back to Pride, the same type of thing that they did.
Yeah, that's one of the things I loved about Pride is they didn't care how many fights that you won or lost, just as long as you were out there putting on a good show.
Yeah.
As long as you put on a good show, you were always invited back. If you look at like Kevin Randleman in Pride, he probably had, I'm just guessing, but he probably had like a 50-50 win to loss ratio. But man, every time Kevin Randleman came out, he was either killing somebody or he was getting killed. There was really no in between. And
but it's
the Japanese fans loved him.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you're part of a great fight. It takes 2 fighters. It's not one guy. It's a fight. There's 2 guys in there. So, and then that like Pride, they appreciated both sides of the battle.
Yeah, exactly.
So going on to another great fight on the main card, we have Yodsanklai Fairtex versus Sammy Sana. And this is another
AK-47 Sana. Let's get that. That's his nickname is AK-47, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is a pretty cool name. And this one is for the featherweight kickboxing Grand Prix as well. So all these guys that are fighting in the Grand Prix for $1 million paycheck, which
$1 million. That's a big deal.
It's awesome because you don't really see this anywhere else where high-level Muay Thai fighters or kickboxers will fight for a purse that is this high. So it's pretty awesome that ONE FC is doing this.
And I believe that they just I was listening to a few of the comments, and they had the owner of ONE just came out with that and said, "Hey guys, this is for $1 million." And everybody was like, "Oh, it's time to step it up." So it's really cool to see somebody just go, "All right, Yeah, you're getting paid to fight. You're getting paid to win. They probably get win show bonuses just like most organizations. But at the end of the day, hey, when we're done with this and you get this belt or you win this championship, you're going to get an extra $1,000,000. That's pretty cool.
Oh, man. And they were talking about Yodsanklai. His first fight, I think they said he made 20 baht.
Yeah. It was like,
wait, how much is 20 baht?
Less than $1. $1 US is 33 baht. So
yeah. So it's like next to nothing. So yeah, it's pretty awesome that he gets to fight for something like this.
And another thing is Sammy, the AK-47. He's actually beat Sanchai. So I mean,
he's not aware of that.
Yeah, he's a legitimate Muay Thai fighter also. So yeah, this is for kickboxing, and what it goes back to is a kickboxing rule set. Yodsanklai is also a Muay Thai fighter. He won the he beat John Wayne Parr. He's beat legends also, and he's known as the boxing computer, and he's had over 200 fights. Sammy Sana is also he's 133 fights. So these guys have had some serious fights in their career. Yodsanklai at this fight he is on a 31 fight win streak. So, and then he had 79 KOs. He's not, again, it goes back to they're bringing elite level strikers, elite level fighters, and putting them in the one ring or cage. And it's high level athletes.
Yeah, which is just awesome. So we'll go ahead. Let's jump into this fight. And let me see. I got to pull up my notes here real quick. So the first round, it was a pretty good round. The fight goes all 3 rounds, but every single round was a pretty good round to watch. Like, it was all action packed. It was all really good. So I thought in the first round, I thought that Sana was he was still kind of finding himself, and I actually gave that round to Yodsanklai up until the last 40 seconds of that round.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the last 40 seconds of that round, Sana really turned it on, and I believe he hit him with a head kick. Wasn't it a head kick?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, he sat him down with the head kick.
Yeah, he was down, and he was saved by the bell from what I saw.
Yeah, he was still there. His eyes were still open, but he was definitely wobbly.
He got up a little wobbly.
And Yodsanklai was the favorite. He was actually one of the favorites to win this tournament. So seeing the end of the first round where he gets sat down was pretty crazy. Yeah. I totally was not expecting that.
No, and I didn't know Sana very well. I've watched tons of Yodsanklai fights. Where I'm at, actually in Thailand, his gym is 10 minutes from my condo. I was just in Fairtex gym the other day, and before probably a week ago, and Yodsanklai was still training. So I watched some of his training while I was over there. So I'm a fan of his. I was rooting for him. I was like, Yodsanklai win the whole thing. But after that first round, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a serious fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight. The second round, Sana was really pushing, Yodsanklai, but the cool thing about Yodsanklai was he was not going anywhere. He was standing right there, and he was just throwing back.
They were trading some really hard shots. They were going toe to toe, and they were just banging, which is great.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about Muay Thai fighters in general is the way that Muay Thai is scored. They like to see you go toe to toe. Like, if you're going toe to toe and you start backing up a little bit, usually they're favoring the fighter that's pushing forward. They really like it when guys, they draw that line in the sand and just go at it.
How I was always told, and I'm sure you were told the same thing, is when they're fighting, stadium fighting, is you're kind of almost playing tag. So the person that finishes the exchange wins the exchange. And it's like if I throw 1-2 low kick on you, you better return the same thing or something with more power for you to win that exchange. And if I leave the exchange with the final strikes, typically I won that exchange, especially with forward pressure.
Which is pretty amazing when you see some of the exchanges when you're like, holy crap, they're like 50, like 1 kick, 2 kick, 3 kick, like they're just going back and forth, and they landed like 50 kicks in total. Every once in a while you get a crazy war like that. It's pretty amazing to watch.
Even in the clinch, they clinch up, and if you catch a knee, you better throw a knee like immediately before they break. If they break you up and you were not the last one to throw the knee, in judges' eyes, you lost that exchange.
And one of the things that I kind of wish is that this kickboxing tournament was a Muay Thai tournament, because that's one of the things that they couldn't do, or they could do for a very limited time, was clinch. So I think the rule was 3 seconds, you could throw whatever you want, and then you had to let go. But the other thing too is they couldn't elbow.
Right. There's actually the kickboxing rule set is no elbows and no throws. And then when you clinch, you can exchange in 3 seconds and you have to break.
Which I saw a lot of times. Yodsanklai was like marching forward and looking for that clinch, kind of to stall the action a little bit. But in Muay Thai, like when you could grab somebody like that, you could do damage. And typically if you're losing on the outside, if you're losing to kicks, if you're losing to punches, it's a good idea to wrap them up like that. And it's just one more element to the game that I really wish that we could have saw in this Yodsanklai Sana fight.
And and that's what's really cool about one is they get to fight all these different styles. Like whatever you want to fight, you can fight. Another fighter out of Fairtex, Stamp Fairtex, she went into one, and now she's actually the kickboxing champion and the Muay Thai champion. But she went into one as an MMA fighter. Rich Franklin brought her in and said, "Okay, yeah, we'll have her as an MMA fighter." And she had a head kick knockout that broke the girl's jaw. And they were like, "Whoa, wait a minute. Where's she from?" And they're like, "No, she's a Muay Thai fighter." And they're like, so now she actually is the kickboxing rule set champion and the Muay Thai set champion.
That's awesome.
And she will be fighting MMA, so they want to make her a 3-division champion.
Yeah, that's what's really, I think it's going to be amazing, is when you start to see the high-level Muay Thai fighters actually start to train wrestling and jiu-jitsu and actually become proficient at it. I think you're going to see a lot of amazing fighters. Like I've always said that if you could get a really good wrestler to learn the Muay Thai clinch, like if you got a really good wrestler and you sent them over to like FA group, I think you would get a really, really amazing fighter. Could you imagine, let's say, Khabib going over to like FA group and learning how to fight in the clinch?
Yeah. Yeah, because the pressure that they have in wrestling is the same. It's very similar to the pressure that a clinch fighter has. If you've never been locked up with a real clinch fighter, they just suck the energy out of you. And Khalil was telling me stories because, our buddy Khalil Roundtree, he's a big guy. He fights at 205 in the UFC, and he was training over here at the Pettendy Academy. And he said, well, there's nobody really for me to train. But for the clinch training, he's training with Thais. Thais are not 220 walking pounds. So he's like, these guys are so strong, and it's the testament to the power of their clinch. And the same thing as if you've ever wrestled with a guy. The guy can be, 125-pound, like a proficient wrestler, and he's going to outpower you and then just hold you wherever he wants. And that's the same thing with the Thai clinch. It's when you get somebody that's very proficient in the Thai clinch, they'll smother the hell out of you, and you don't like it.
Yeah, I think once you start seeing these guys come up, I think it's going to be great. The other thing about the clinch, too, is great clinch fighters, they don't only know how to dominate you in the clinch, they know how to get there. They know how to block the strikes. They know how, when you're returning your kick, they know exactly when it's safest for them to come in, and then they're going to go ahead and close that space and start tying you up.
Which transfers right over to a good wrestler. They know when to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. So, getting a little bit off topic here, but let's go ahead. We'll jump into round 3 of the Yodsanklai Sana fight.
So, Yodsanklai was basically seemed like in round 3, he was kind of on rubber legs. Had some strikes back and forth, but he just doesn't seem definitely not what he was in round 1 or 2. So that's my seeing of what was going on in that fight. He just seemed to fade off.
Yeah, he was fading a little bit, but at the same time, he really didn't go anywhere. Like, Sana was definitely losing, or excuse me, he was winning all of the exchanges, but Yodsanklai was still there. He was still throwing back the entire time. The biggest thing that I remember from round 3 is Sana landing that nasty teep to the face.
Yeah.
He just landed a really good teep to the face right towards the end of that round. And, I mean, he was already winning, but that was just like the icing on the cake.
Yeah, it was and Sana wins decision and takes Yodsanklai out of the tournament, which was a big upset. It wasn't really seen that way, but I'm sure that
he was one of the favorites to win. So
I'm sure that Sana's corner they're not surprised. So
yeah. And, Sana's a great fighter. I didn't know too much about him, but yeah, after watching that fight, I was like, yeah, I could see him winning this entire thing as well.
Yeah. And then even the next fight is also the next fight's also part of that the quarterfinals of the Grand Prix.
And since you did a little bit of training at that Petchendy Academy, I'll go ahead and let you pronounce the fighter's name.
Petchmorakot Petchendy.
So Petchmorakot versus Giorgio Petrosian.
And if you're into Muay Thai or kickboxing, you've probably heard Petrosian before. He's been around for a while also.
It was a really good fight. It winds up going to decision. But we'll start out here with the first round, and this is my observation, was that Petrosian, he was dominating the outside angle. So before I go into the outside angle, like most people know that in a southpaw versus orthodox scenario, that lead foot, whoever has their foot on the outside, is the one dominating the fight, basically because it lines up the power hand right to the center line of their body, to their face. So I thought that Petrosian, if you looked at his feet throughout the entire first round, he was mostly dominating that outside angle. But then again, Petchmorakot, if I said that right, he was doing a really good job of always firing back. So, Petrosian was throwing a lot of combinations, and, Pet was just kind of throwing back kicks off of all of his punches, really, in that first round.
Yeah, it seemed that Petrosian had good pressure and good defense, and Pet just seemed to be like a kind of a step behind, almost. And I mean, he's a high level fighter. Petchendy is actually, they're producing a lot of one championship fighters now, and it's not a huge gym, but they're putting out some really good fighters. But most of their gym is Muay Thai fighters also, and as you know, in a Muay Thai fight, the first round is a feeling out process, and it seemed he wasn't in the kill mode per se in round 1. And Petrosian, he had good pressure, good defense. He wasn't getting really banged up or anything. And he, like you were saying, he seemed to be winning the fight game in a whole in the first round.
One of the things that the announcers were talking about was how much film study that Petrosian had done on Petchmorakot. And one of the things that he said was that he noticed that Petchmorakot liked to throw a lot of low kicks. And one of the things that I always find difficult to do is when you have somebody in an opposite stance, is to throw those low kicks, because if you want to attack the lead leg, you have to kick the inside, or you have to switch your stance to kick the outside. And the way that Petrosian angled his front leg, his knee was angled in, which, takes away that inside low kick. But then Petchmorakot would have had to switch stance to hit the lead leg, which I thought would have been, something a lot more difficult to do against Petrosian, especially as he's constantly trying to come forward with his hand and kick combinations.
Yeah, it's definitely it was interesting to watch. And then the Petrosian's actually, he was the favor in this fight too.
So I think really round 2, the biggest difference maker that I saw was the hands. Because I feel like a lot of times when somebody has good hands, you need to counter with the low kicks. And with the low kicks being taken away, Pitch Northcutt, the biggest thing that he had was the body kick. Body kick, but it seemed like Petrosian was landing like 4 or 5 punches to one body kick, which I feel like sometimes the kicks may do more damage than that many punches, but when you got somebody like Petrosian throwing at you, I thought that he actually had the advantage in this fight.
If you go back to like we talked about before, it's just scoring in Muay Thai.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking stadium Muay Thai. Is body kicks outscore hands. And it seemed kind of like that was their mindset. And I'm not saying it was. It just kind of looked like that's what it was. Is that was a Muay Thai mindset when they were fighting. And also, Pet seemed very happy, really selling himself, having fun in the fight. Which in the second round, I mean, it was an odd thing. I mean, it's great that he was having fun and everything, but you'd think that in his mind, he was way ahead.
Yeah. And just to jump to the end of the fight, Pitch Northcutt actually wins by decision, which surprised me because, I watched this replay on YouTube and I watched to the very end of the fight and I didn't even watch the decision because I just assumed that Petrosian won.
Well, in the third round, what happened, Pet comes out and he's more the aggressor. What he was doing really that I saw is he was using that 3-second clinch very effectively to stop Petrosian's boxing, which he should have been doing earlier, but he didn't. But that 3-second clinch, like we were talking about, you can clinch for 3 seconds, you have to let go, which in a Thai fighter, that's how they stop someone from striking, is a clinch. So he would use it, let go, and it was very repetitive, but he was using it to stop the boxing. And again, he's selling his victory before the decision. He was sure he won, and he actually ends up winning split decision, and it was the shock upset. So
Petrosian, just like Yodsanklai, they thought that they were going to meet in the finals. Was the general consensus, but they didn't wind up happening.
And that is for that fight. And then the next fight.
So just a few more fights here on the main card. Both of the fights, which I didn't get a chance to see, but the next one that we have is Nikki Holtzkin versus Regan Ursel from the Netherlands. Actually, they're both from the Netherlands.
Yeah, it was the Netherlands fight, and it's for the World Championship, the lightweight kickboxing World Championship. And if you know kickboxing and things like that, Nikki Holtzkin, and they're both they're known names. Nikki Holtzkin is an elite level fighter. But I believe it's Aerosol came out and he was wearing an Immortals mask, if you've seen that movie. So something else that one does, it kind of lets the fighters show a little of their own personality and their walkouts and things like that. So that was pretty funny, as I was like, wow, okay, that was pretty cool. Aerosol is actually a 2-time lion fight champion. And something about Nikki Holtzkin, if you didn't know, he was trained by the legend Ramon Decker, and he's also a 5-time world kickboxing champion. And so the first round of this fight, Aerosol was using a lot of the lead low kicks, and Nikki was using some good pressure. The fight goes back and forth in the first round, so it was a good fight. In the second round, Aerosol's pressuring and using that inside low kick again, and Nikki gets stopped for a low blow, and it was a devastating knee. And to me, it didn't even look like it skimmed the cup. It looked like it just shut the guy down. It was right up the middle, and it was right, kind of like maybe below the belly button where it'll stop you in your tracks, and that's what it did. Another thing that Nicky was doing, he's throwing a lot of nice spinning kicks, really like spot on spinning heel kicks, all sorts of stuff. He was very, very energized. That was the second round. And in the third, let's see, he goes up. Airsaw turns it up. He's throwing flying knees. And Holtzkin kind of shut down in the third. He slowed down. He wasn't throwing as much. And then, that's kind of how the round went, is Airsaw turned it up and Nicky turned it down.
So do you think Nicky was winning the first couple rounds?
You could. I think that it's kind of up in the air. I'd have to watch it again to really break down like who exactly I would give the rounds to. But it didn't seem like a blowout by either fighter. There was, other than, the low blow, it didn't seem like anybody was getting really beat up, because I don't believe that was a low blow. And they showed the replay and everybody's like, oh, that was pretty close. And I don't know. Here's another thing. If you watch Muay Thai in stadium fights, low blows are so far and few between. And then they get hit in the cup. You know that. I mean, they get kicked in the cup. And it seems way more prevalent in MMA for these weird low blows, and then for people to actually take the time. And I don't know if it's the pride thing in Muay Thai fights and stadium fights that they don't take that time to recover. It's very rare. But even in the previous one championship, the other fighter from Pet and D that won, he stopped the guy. And what happens here is when I believe it's a certain time into the round, if you're hit with like a low blow and you can't continue, you lose the fight.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
so that's how the other one actually won his fight last time. Was it a week ago or two in Bangkok? I went to the fights, and it was a low blow, but he couldn't recover, and they stretchered the guy out. Like,
damn.
Like I've seen a lot of low blows between amateur fights, Muay Thai fights, whatever, and I'd never seen a guy like stretchered out because of a low blow. I was like, wow, that must have really hurt. But
I think another big thing about those low blows in MMA compared to in Muay Thai or kickboxing is I feel like the technique plays a big role in that as well, because a lot of people, like amateurish kickboxers, like maybe they're a really good wrestler in MMA, they have a tendency to kind of angle their kick upwards, where Thai fighters tend to turn their kicks over a little bit more, especially on that inside leg kick. So I feel like it is a little bit of a technique issue a lot of times in MMA. It's just a little bit of bad kicking form is why you see a little bit more low blows.
Yeah, it just it goes even more to, this has nothing to do with it, but I went and watched a soccer game in Buriram, professional soccer game, the best team in Thailand. They were playing Japan, and my goodness, these are still top level athletes, but like a soccer player gets like pushed over and they're grabbing their legs like they just got their, like the worst checking of a kick in the world. And so they're playing it up for the sport, but it was like, it feels like Muay Thai fighters don't play that up.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Muay Thai fighters compared to, and maybe it's just, I have a soft spot for Muay Thai or whatever it is being over here in Thailand, but it seems like as the farther we go out, so like kickboxing is little more than Muay Thai, but then when you get to MMA, there's a lot of low blows and people are just like dying from. And I personally, I think that has something to do with, because in MMA you get very winded, because you have all the aspects and you're tired. So if you catch that break and it hurts a little or it hurts a lot, whatever, you're going to take that time to kind of catch your breath. But
I have a personal story that kind of goes along with that too. I remember years ago I took a kickboxing match like very last minute, and I was working night shift at the time, and I had like a couple hours of sleep, and I wound up going to this kickboxing tournament, and the guy that I went against was super game, and we had an exhausting first 2 rounds, and then in that third round, he barely skimmed my cup, and I was fine to go, but I wanted that little extra breather, so I took 10, 20 seconds, So a lot of times, like when you get that exhausted, like you get kind of desperate. You know what I mean?
No, I could imagine. I mean, yeah, it's I think one of the championships, the IBJJF championships that we went to, and you remember I had a little cut, and they stopped the match like I was gonna die. I was exhausted, and they were like, "Don't get up," and it was just a little scrape over my eye, and it happened, I believe, the night before from like a fingernail, and I was like, "I'm gonna lay here." I'm
Yeah,
good. You know, you're when you're that exhausted, yeah, and I think that's kind of attributes to it is in MMA. Like we've trained, you know, you and I have trained Muay Thai, we've trained kickboxing, we've trained MMA, we've trained jiu-jitsu, and MMA is so exhausting because it's everything together, you know. And I think if you catch a low blow and you can catch a break by trying to catch your breath from a low blow, I would see it being used more in MMA.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like, yeah, you're milking it a little bit. It's a little bit cheap, but I mean, as long as you're not getting the fight called, it's whatever.
Yeah. Both guys are getting a break too, so it's not it's not benefiting
exactly,
just one of them.
exactly.
So, all right, and the fourth round. Let's see. It looked like Arizal still landing the low kicks. He used them throughout the whole fight, and Nicky's leg's pretty red. Nicky Holtzkin just seemed to lose power. So there was Arizal throws a jump knee and knocks Holtzkin down. That was the round ends, and it looked like Nicky's just losing. So the fifth round they come out, and Arizal has good energy, and Nicky has more energy now, but they're not engaging. So they're trying to, they're feeling each other out. It's 5 rounds in, guys. It's a long fight. And so they're feeling each other out. They're throwing back and forth. And the ref actually yells at them for not fighting, which you do see a lot in Muay Thai. Literally every exchange, the refs in Muay Thai are yelling to fight, like between every exchange. You see it in kickboxing also, whereas in a lot of MMA fights, they let it go for a long time. So Holtzkin starts to pressure. 30 seconds left. They start to throw down. 30 seconds too late, in my opinion. 3 rounds too late for Nicky. And he actually ends up losing. So Arizal becomes the kickboxing Super Series lightweight champion.
On to Shinya Aoki versus Christian Lee.
Yeah, Christian Lee, his sister, Angela Lee, is a one fighting championship champion. So he was fighting a legend in Shinya Aoki, who was the champion. I believe he had lost his belt, retained his belt, and he's been looking really good for the last few fights. And they come out, and Aoki gets mount. It was right to the ground. Aoki gets mount, and he's dropping elbows on him, and he goes for a legit armbar, and it's tight. And Lee toughs it out. I mean, this thing, if you watch the replay on it, it's an armbar that a lot of people would have tapped to. Aoki goes for a second armbar, and it very, in my opinion, I don't know if it was desperation or he thought he saw something, but he went for it, and it looked loose to me. It didn't look like he had the same pressure, and Lee was able to escape from that, and then they stood up. But, he's a young star, and he became, with winning the title, he became the youngest MMA champion there was. Like in all the events. So
that's crazy. And Shinya Aoki's no joke. I mean, he's a legend.
He's a legend, and a lot of people know him. So this was for the MMA championship, and he got it done in second round. So props to him. And now their family has 2 champions, and that's pretty cool. I mean, maybe brother and sister would both be world champions. That'd be pretty awesome. On a side closing note to the fights, swimmer Michael Phelps presents the belt to Lee for his championship. I have no clue how this fit into the story. I don't know if Michael Phelps I believe this was in Singapore, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was hanging out there, he was swimming around over there or something, but somehow the guy gets in the ring, and he was able to present the belt. More power to him. So, so that's basically our take on the one championship card from this past weekend. And Super Sage gets put to sleep and gets facial reconstructive surgery as a bonus. Yodsanklai doesn't make it out of the fight. Nicky Holtzkin doesn't make it out of his fight. These are all people that were big upsets. A lot of people wanted to see what Sage could do in one championship, and we'll have to wait to see another time what he can do.
Yeah, overall, it was a great card.
I thought it was awesome. Striking was, it was a highlight of it. And what is cool with one is they're doing, you can have all the different types of styles in the same ring, in the same night. Bellator kind of tries to go for that with the Bellator kickboxing, and then they're doing that in a ring, and then they have a cage and a ring set up at the same event. But this is wherever it goes down, and they also use different size gloves. They'll wear the big gloves, and they'll wear 4-ounce gloves for MMA, for kickboxing, and for Muay Thai. Well, they don't do MMA in big gloves, but that'd be interesting to see too. So that is it for the fight recap of the One Championship, Enter the Dragon. If you guys have not watched One Championship, do it. You're missing out on a lot of good striking, a lot of good athletes. So check that out. To round this one up, I'm Kelly from Fight Chase. Check out fightchase.com for all of our social media, for tips, tricks, training in Thailand. And my partner, Kurt.
Yep. Kurt Brooks over here. If you're ever in Carson City, come check us out at Carson Kickboxing Club.
All right, and there you have it. We will see you guys next time reviewing some more fights. And that is it. And don't say boom.
Lobs out moisture, seals in freshness. Good night, Irene. Double hammer fist, double hammer fist, double hammer fist. Seconds remaining for a great survival story.